welcome back to another video by Hospitality Principles. So today I kind of want to talk about my typical day when I was a restaurant supervisor. One thing to keep in mind if you are in this position or you're going to be in this position is every restaurant has their own kind of ideas what each position's responsibilities are. So there might be some differences between my typical day and perhaps your day or somebody you know in that position. And remember, if you like this kind of content, please do subscribe and like the video if you found it to be helpful. Leave me a comment if you have some suggestions on this video. So my typical day as a restaurant, or I think I was called a shift supervisor, started with me showing up generally about half an hour to an hour before the rest of the staff for that shift. I would start by checking in with the manager. And one nice thing about this position in comparison to when I did move into management, the nice part was my day off was my day off. So there was a disconnect sometimes of a couple days. If I had 2 days off, I would come back and there would be a disconnect of what had happened during those 2 days and where I was. So I would kind of have to get filled in on that. So after a kind of a chat, or I guess you could call it kind of a meeting with the manager, I would check the staff schedule and the books for the day, so I would have a general idea of who's coming in, what's going on for that shift, and then I would start to make a floor plan. So that would entail, assigning sections for the servers, as well as kind of making a pre-shift note. Now I kind of have a template for that. If you're interested in seeing that template, let me know again in the comments. The floor plan as well. A floor plan is a little more tricky. It's going to be varied from restaurant to restaurant. I'd be happy to share some of mine if you would like to see that as well. But I would make those. Important thing to kind of keep in mind when doing those is the kind of requests by guests, or maybe there's a certain VIP or somebody who has a request for a certain table or a certain server, and understanding the staff's strength and weakness. So this is a great thing to work on, is kind of judging people by and understanding what their strengths and weaknesses are, because that would definitely help you once you're in management. This would have to be approved by my manager, so then I would either leave it on his desk or I would hunt him down and kind of go over it with him, explain why I set it up a certain way, and see if he agrees with me. And once he's approved it, I would make some copies of it, and I would distribute it to each section so that when the service staff came in, they would be able to see where their assignment is and who they will be working with. I would also give one copy to the host team so that they knew who to assign the tables to. I would go and do a walkthrough of the restaurant and make a list of things that had to be done in addition to the day-to-day pre-shift work that the service staff would have to do. Once the staff started to arrive, I would take the time and make sure that this team was all there. Everybody was in on time. They were starting their side work. They knew what they needed to do, and make sure that they completed their tasks. Shift meal was often right before the pre-shift meeting, so I was responsible for making sure that everybody was there for the pre-shift meeting. Often people would, they would eat their family meal and then they would go down and go to the bathroom, they'd go out for a smoke or whatever, so I was responsible for making sure that they were back in time. Depending on the day, the manager would generally lead the pre-shift meeting, but sometimes I would be responsible for that. And if we were doing some kind of training, then I was often leading that training. It could be service, it could be drinks, or anything like that. If I wasn't leading it, for example, if we had a drink training, having a purveyor or a producer come in and talk about a product, then it would be my responsibility to make sure they had everything they needed for that, tasting glasses, silverware for tasting food, or anything like that. Once pre-shift was finished, I would have a few minutes to kind of do whatever generally. Depending on the day, if it was a very, very busy day, let's say we were going into the holiday seasons or something like that, or it was a weekend night, I would go to the front desk and kind of start to help them as the guests start to come in, do help with coat check, help checking in guests, and then once the dining room's ready, perhaps I would help lead the guests to their tables and get them situated. Then once service gets started, my responsibility changed a little bit there, and I would mainly go around and make sure everything was in order. I was just kind of like the air traffic controller, you might say, and I would be going around just making sure everything is adequately maintained, make sure that, you know, tables are taken care of, have plenty of water. Most of the time I would leave most of the table contact up to the captains and servers. I would occasionally check in with tables, just go by the table maybe 2 times through a meal, check in with them early and then check in at the end, or maybe somewhere in between, depending on what kind of meal they were having. I don't want to check in every single course, as their server or captain will be doing just that. If a problem arose with a table, either because the captain, the server, or the kitchen made a mistake, I would have to step in and kind of help the server find a solution, either whether it's me going to the kitchen to explain what needs to be done to the chef, or if, let's say, the server needs to step away to go speak to the chef, then I would have to take over that section while that captain is gone. That being said, it was very important for me to understand everything that's going on in the dining room at all times. I knew approximately what course every single table was on. I understood what they were drinking, any allergies they might be. And a good way that I found to kind of keep track of this, the restaurant I worked at, we had maybe about 30 tables in one dining space. We had several dining rooms, but one room had about 30 to 40 tables. So that's a lot to keep track of. So I would have charts in each section. So each service station would have a chart, and the server or the captain who took the order was responsible for marking down allergies, water preferences, whatever, just in case my memory wasn't perfect, and I know for sure my memory was not perfect. So then throughout the service, I was largely just delegating and going around making sure there were no missed spots. If it was very busy, sometimes having a server or captain might have to step off the floor to go talk to the chef about an allergy or something. I would then have to jump in and make sure that section is fully taken care of. So sometimes my responsibility was just marking tables. Let's say if the server or the busser had to run to use the restroom, then suddenly I would take that position for a few minutes just to make sure that things went smoothly in that section. Now, another thing was throughout the service, depending on what is going on and what kind of manager you work with, some managers are very hands-on, some are not. Often I would work with my manager. He was relatively hands-on. He would go around, or sometimes he'll just stand at the host stand and let me do it. But I'll go around and check in on tables. So we were working at a fine dining, like a tasting menu restaurant. So often I would check in every few courses at a table, make sure that they're doing well, make sure they're being well taken care of. One thing was I always worked really closely with the manager to make sure we're not overwhelming the guests by interacting with them too much. You know, let's say the server goes and checks on them, the captain checks on them, and then I check on them, and then the manager checks on them. That might be a little bit much. So making sure that we are not overdoing it, but we are making sure that the customer feels like they're being taken care of. As the service starts to wind down, that was another area that I had to really be careful with. Staff members start to want to do their side work, so they go off to do the side work and start to neglect their tables. This was something that I had to do to make sure that they were not neglecting their guests, especially at this time. And then coordinating cuts with the opening members. Let's say the opening team is in. Make sure they do complete whatever side work they got to do. Transfer their tables to the closing teams. And this was always, again, rather challenging because everybody wants to leave early. The opening team wants to leave early. The closing team doesn't want them to leave. They want them to do more side work. So making sure that that's done fairly. And as a supervisor, I was generally the last one to leave of the service staff. Perhaps the manager in the kitchen might be later than me, but generally I would be there until the last server left. But for you, that might be different, depends on the restaurant. And that would be generally my day. Then I would go out and hit my local bars. Hopefully you found this insightful. If you did, please do give me a like. I do appreciate it. Any feedback on how I might improve my videos or anything you would like to see, leave them in the comments down below. Thank you again, and I hope to see you in the next video. Have a great day.